Hey everybody, and welcome to an Around the Lens interview. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me this week is Ron Newcomb. He's the CEO of the Forge Studios and the Concept Compass. Ron, welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
Good, man. I'm doing great. It's exciting time for the filmmaking industry. So yeah, glad to be on and eager to have a discussion around filmmaking.
Awesome, great. Well, happy to have you. We go back a little bit now. We've known each other for a few months now. And I just want to say it's been great to know you so far, and you've introduced me to a lot of great resources. So why don't you go ahead and tell the audience a little about yourself, your background, and how you got into the filmmaking business?
Yeah, man. So I am a filmmaker entrepreneur, I would say, based out of the Northern Virginia area. We all kind of claim Washington, D.C., because that's kind of the biggest city around. And I was adding up the years the other day, and I'm actually pushing about 27 years in the indie film space.
Wow.
I used to, right out of the Marine Corps, I became a police officer, and we used to moonlight as security guys at a movie theater. This was before the digital age. And so one of my buddies who actually has now gone on and had a really good acting career in LA, and you could see him up on the big screen, a guy named Jim, he was like, "Hey man, he also wanted to get into the film space." And I let him read one of my screenplays and he was super pumped about it. And we were going to local stuff, but nobody was really doing anything major. So he was like, "I'm going to do my own film." And it was just when the digital age started to come upon us, and he went to the movie theater and was like, "Hey, can we use the theater from like 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.?" And of course, we're cops. They were like, "Sure." So
Oh,
we
wow.
had he had this really cool location, and so he wrote a script for that, and he treated it extremely professional. And although the film turned out the way it turned out, what it did show me was that this was suddenly now possible, that the digital age was upon us. And I realized, holy cow, this might be a great equalizer. That was a long time ago, like I said, 27 years ago. And I kind of find myself now having similar conversations as we've had with green screen and CGI, and now with AI and things. These seem to be kind of repeat items. So I created a company um, called Opening Act Productions first. I started this kind of cohesive group out of this church that I was a part of, for filmmakers. And I had this really nice couple that were going to do this family friendly movie, and they needed somebody to direct it. And they just kept asking me. And at first I was like, "I don't think so. I don't know if it's my thing." But they were such a sweet couple that I thought, man, I'm going to help them out. So it was a great experience because, again, it got me behind the camera. It got me on a set. It got me doing. And that's the most important part. And this couple was like a power couple. They did what they said they were going to do, and they finished the film and got it out there, which I think is really important. A lot of people don't realize that close to 80% of films wipe out in post, meaning they go do the thing, have the fun, and then can't finish it and wipe out in post. So this couple was not that. And I got a lot of experience with that. But then my business partners and I did a film that you can find called Rise of the Fellowship. And the unique thing that we did there was it was right around the first Lord of the Rings, and we attached ourselves to the Lord of the Rings video game. And that was my A-list talent. I couldn't afford an A-list talent like many of us today. And people are like, "Well, how can I solve that?" What I did was I attached myself to a strong IP. And as a result of that, that opened up doors and got me a really good, robust distribution deal. And I ended up learning a ton on the business side of filmmaking. And when I would be asked to speak to, let's say, colleges, I would always talk about the business side, and I would always get responses of, "Holy cow, we're getting ready to graduate 4 years of film school, and we've never heard the stuff you're talking about, the business side of things." So that's where I started to really focus, double down on. I've written a book about it and getting ready to come up with the second draft of that. I started a podcast around it called the Indie Coach Podcast. And I've done some talking and discussion points around that. And so I've consulted with a lot of filmmakers. And that's how I started to also see certain pain points and areas that we could do better in. And that's where I started to come up with this concept compass idea. But that kind of gets us to today. I also married 5 kids along the way. So life has a tendency to go a long way over the last 27 years. And I find myself finally at an age where I finally feel like, I need to start mentoring some people and coaching some people up. So I'm looking back around to see, man, who can I help pull up? I don't feel like I'm way further down the road on a lot of people. I'm just a little further, but I feel like I could bring breadcrumbs or a light at the tunnel to kind of help them along. And frankly, sometimes it's good just to have somebody else to talk things out with. And that's also what I kind of provide now. So, yeah, it's a little bit of my journey and kind of where I came from.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, you've got 5 kids who you can raise up in the film industry if they really want to. Have they expressed any interest in it, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard not to see a dad that is on the creative process. I did this really cool steampunk Western sci-fi called Outlawed Faith. It was just a short film, but I put my 2 daughters in it, and they were really little. And there
Oh,
was a day, Dave, that it was like 150 extras on set, and these two
oh,
little girls showed up, and they thought they were just like the lead characters, and in a way, they kind of were, but the
yeah.
around them treated them so well and so special. They still talk about that. I still have a bunch of behind the scenes footage of it. And now my one oldest daughter, she did some voiceover work. My second daughter has also expressed a lot, even around like writing. And then my third daughter has also expressed some interest around acting. But, I tell them all the time, like, that's not an easy thing necessarily to find. So you have to kind of find your own way and carve
Hmm.
out your own opportunities. And for the listener, that's what I'm going to encourage each of us to do. If I ask you, what do you do? And you say, well, I'm just an actor or I'm just a writer, and you're trying to stay in that unique lane, unless you're going to go to LA and go get a manager and agent, you need to become a producer. And in fact, in
Hmm.
2025, all the major actors, if you look at them, become producers, and many writers do as well, because they know at some point their A-list cachet is going to run out and they
Yeah.
want to be the ones driving the stories. So I think most people don't realize that they really need to embrace being a producer. And that's what I would encourage people to do. And in fact, that's kind of what I'm seeing about training my daughters ultimately. And I also have a little son. Um, what they might want to do. Control your own destiny of where you're going.
Yeah, no, it's an important thing. And kudos to you with, again, raising the kids and having the full-time job and trying to do all this additional stuff. I don't know where you find the time, but
Yeah.
good kudos to you on that regard. Let me go back to your first feature that you said you directed for the power couple. How did they how did they come to you as a director? Did you go through a film school, or were you just an
No.
avid
Yeah.
self-trained director type?
Yeah, exactly. I had kind of just been self-taught, self-study, and I would jump on a set or an opportunity as much as I could. There are 48-hour film projects all over the place now. You can jump on those. There's competitions like called the 168. Anytime I got a chance to direct, I would. And I
Hmm.
read a lot, watched a lot of videos, and at some point, you start to develop those skills and people start to see that, and they knew that they couldn't do it. They
Yeah.
were doing everything else, and so they needed somebody to come alongside them, and it was kind of a perfect mesh of opportunity to come together. So it really was just a matter of kind of self-teaching, learning, educating, and then also kind of putting myself out there as such so that people knew enough that I'm interested and am a director. Because I started out as an actor and fell in love with directing.
Okay.
I produce by default. No one else is going to produce myself, so I
Yeah.
produce.
Yeah.
I also have trained as a writer. I went through extensive writing programs.
Oh, wow.
Um, but I wouldn't say I'm a great writer. I'm a good writer. I'm a really good rewriter or a first draft. I have a very, very hard time of rewriting my own stuff.
Right.
So, again, what I would encourage you, dear listener, is to consider a writing partner. And that's what I did. I read this guy, and I've had 2 writing partners throughout my tenure. But my current writing partner, Jay, is just fantastic. He's just top notch. And I just kind of was like, hey, can we come together? And he said, yeah. And we worked on a few projects, and his work is just impeccable. So, that again, I think is a nugget of a takeaway is that you don't have to be all things, but you can also align yourself with other people that want to go and operate at that level. And he saw that I was trying to achieve that. So he threw in with me, and we've been writing partners now for a good while, probably 10 years now. We have
Wow.
12 screenplays. I think it's that are ready to go. And we have another 12 ideas that are like, fully fleshed out, not just like I have a thought, like no log lines, one sheets, more than just something. So yeah, he's been busy. In fact, I owe him an email because we have a current project, one of the best lookbook pitch decks I've ever seen. We had another guy put together for us, and we're still shopping that around to see what we might do with that one. So yeah.
Now, Ron, obviously you mentioned the desire to want to lift others up, right? And so you've devised a lot of different programs and courses. Talk to me a little bit about those programs and kind of how they all funnel into the concept compass.
Yeah, so I really have tried to, with the podcast and consulting with a lot of people over the years, you start to see the same pain points. And, I'm one of us. I'm not from an outside perspective seeing an opportunity financially to make a dime. I sincerely, if I can't help you, then I don't want to take people's money. I do feel like I can coach. I actually have a master's in counseling, believe it or not. So,
Wow.
there's some training there, I think, that also helps a little bit. But really, it does come from kind of the school of hard knocks kind of thing. And it's really anchored more in the business side of things. Like, for instance, one of the things I realized is that most people, we have to have a lot of tenacity and grit to carry our film along. And we all know this, particularly as Americans. Your first no that you get, or someone saying that's not a good idea, and if you fold, well, then what tenacious effort might you need to make that film come to life? Because a film will fight you every step of the way. You have to pull it into existence. It does not want to be made, and you, as the bearer, you as the producer, must pull it into existence. So I understand that part of it. However, I will say that every indie project that I've worked on that had problems all started with story, which is funny because we all know that story is king. And let me push a little further on that. It really isn't the story so much as it's the idea of execution. So it's not like the story in and of itself is bad. That it could be a cool premise, but the idea is flawed. And many times people do not want to come off on that. They just don't want to edit it, which is so funny because any professional writer knows that writing is rewriting. Every filmmaker has heard about the Pixar brain trust at this point. And if you haven't, you need to go look it up. There's several YouTube videos on it. But ultimately, what started out as Pixar, arguably some of the best storytellers of our day, because it was animation, they had animatics. And so they weren't finished, but they could take these little drawings, put some music to it, kind of animate them, and actually put some professional actors' voices to it. And then they would show each other. And there was a group of about 8 of them. And what they could do is they could get feedback on it, on the idea. They could iterate on the idea. That's the key word. In the IT space, we iterate. We use an agile methodology, which is a very lean approach, and then we push stuff out to customers and they give us feedback on it. And we all know that, again, in the entrepreneurial world as the feedback loop. You need a feedback loop on your idea. Filmmaking is one of the few things where you're expected to get this idea, you write it down and you nail it. Maybe you do some internal drafting and rewriting internally, but then you're supposed to execute, raise a bunch of money in the millions of dollars, expect people to give you that money based upon your idea. You go do the fun thing, finish, get it all done, and then throw it over the wall and pray it finds distribution and pray it finds an audience. I just find that backwards. In 2025, there are too many resources out there for you not to go find out if you have an audience. What I have found, though, is that the people I've tried to help don't necessarily want to know the news. Now, what I will say is just because your idea didn't hit on the first go around, that doesn't mean it's flawed or wrong, or they're saying no. They're saying not right now. You need to get feedback on what's not working and iterate on it to make it better. You need to do what the Brain Trust did for Pixar. I just told you I have 12 finished screenplays. I have 12 other ideas. I really don't care which one goes first or goes downrange. And if I had a place where I could go to and put up my concept or my idea and have people give me feedback on them, that would be invaluable to me. And then if I could also had a place where I could go that would help me throughout the product life cycle of a film, that would also help. For instance, we all know that we need a budget and a schedule, but somewhere along the line, you heard this word top sheet and you think that's all you need, and you go pay somebody to give you a top sheet. And if you have someone giving you a budget in the film world without a schedule, you're doing something wrong. That is completely impossible to do. Not a true budget, because how can you know how many days you need to shoot and not be able to put that into the budget format? You don't know how many extras you need because you haven't had the conversation. You have no idea how long you need that A-list talent for. And so when you go make an offer, you got to be ready for a potential yes. What if they say yes and they're like, okay, when are you shooting and how many days are they needed? And you're like, well, I don't know. My top sheet says $1.5 million. Like, it's not, it doesn't work. So I've seen a couple failings that way that I believe that I could help upon. And I've done training and classes around those things. And so, not to confuse Concept Compass, what it is, ultimately, it is a product market fit from the entrepreneurial space. Again, that term. It's an idea incubator. It really is all about fan powered validation. That's really what it's done. It's to pressure test your idea before you burn cash, before you go and do the thing. You try to get an audience that heat checks on your log line, your artwork, your sizzle reels, your pitches, your decks, and the things that you have. And imagine going into an investor meeting saying that you have 10,000 emails ready to go and you have an audience ready for your project. That is a big different conversation than, yeah, I created this cool story totally out of my head, not off IP. I have no idea if there's an audience there, but I want you to give me $2.5 million. Why 2.5 million? I don't know, because it looks like that film over there. That's the kind of landscape that we're in, and we're in the indie space. And what I'm trying to do is call people out of that. I'm trying to call people up to use current modern methodology, including analytics, to show traction. At the end of the day, that's the operative word, traction. Because if you can prove demand early, shape the package to market and hit the product market fit, you can walk into rooms with data and not just a hope and a wing and a prayer. That's why we have you're always going to have a little bit of butterflies when you're talking to an investor. But one of the reasons we have it is because of the doubt. We don't know if the idea is that good, and we're hoping that this person won't see through us. And that's more than just imposter syndrome. That is not doing your diligence. But then the question became to me, well, how do you do due diligence in 2025? And now I finally believe we have the tools and resources to be able to do it. Look, you can go on Meta right now, Facebook and Instagram, run an ad campaign. And I'm telling you, because I've done this. I put together my Outlawed Faith steampunk Western sci-fi that I told you about. I
Mhm.
put together, to try to develop the IP, a comic book. I crowdfunded it, got it funded, and then use that now as a loss leader to gain emails to show that I have an audience for it. But I put out the comic book out there, read or pushed meta ads to it, and got the audience engaged. Now I have a prime audience ready to go. But here's the other thing that Concept Compass can help with. Let's say that you too, Dave, have a steampunk Western, that you want to do, or some type of sci-fi, or, an action thing that might be like-minded. The other thing that people don't realize for fans is a film takes about 3 to 7 years as an independent filmmaker. Hollywood's got it down, to maybe a year, but we take about that long. Now, I do think there's a way to get it down, but I digress. Let's just stay on that timeline. How can you bang the drum long enough to get people excited long enough to keep your email list warm when it's just you? After a while, they get tired of it and frankly just want to see the film. They're like, good night, Ron. Just is the film out or not? And you're like, well, here's another behind the scenes shot of my kids. But if there was a platform that we could keep the audience engaged, not just with your project, but my project and their project and other projects, and invite them into the process. I mean that literally. So, to give you an example, Concept Compass also opens up an IP opportunity where if I create a world, the creator has the opportunity. This is not a requirement, it's just an opportunity to allow people to co create with them. So they literally can pitch them ideas or things either baked into their world that becomes other IP sellable assets that can monetize, or they can pitch things that could align with them and they can be as much involved in it as they want to. Some of it might just be fanfare fiction. And hey, that's fun and cool. But if it's really good, why not bring it into the ecosystem and become part of your world? And again, now you're creating with other people. If I'm a writer, and I'm just an independent writer, and I've been taking my screenplays and turning them into books, so I know a little bit of the author world. I I would find that authors would find that really appealing, that there's already this audience and this system that's baked out there of this filmmaker trying to make a film, and they're inviting me to go play in their steampunk fantasy world. That's a pretty cool thing that I think is a little bit of a differentiating factor. So that's kind of Concept Compass. And then we have these training and kind of boot camps. And I teamed up, and I do have this Indie Coach podcast. So I selfishly, full disclosure, I use the podcast to meet the people I want to meet, right? And then that in and of itself serves a purpose because I get to meet them, but I also get to ask them a bunch of questions and learn a bunch of stuff. The boot camp is kind of cool because I teamed up with these guys primarily out of France. Two guys are in France and another guy, he's overseas too. I don't think he's in France, so I kind of forget him. But their resumes are just fantastic. And they invited me. We became friends. I met one of the guys at an event, struck up a friendship, and they invited me to one of the boot camps. And they only had about 10 people in the boot camp, but there was three of them. Now, that's three instructors per 10 people, for 10 people. The engagement from the instructor to the people was just fantastic. What I loved is they treated the room like it was 10,000 people, that they were talking to an epic audience, and the value that they presented to the team was just absolutely fantastic. It was a Monday through Friday affair in the middle of the day, kind of like during your lunch hour. It was an hour and a half. But one of the big things they did was they really pushed homework, was with another thing that I was like, oh man, people aren't going to do the homework. And everybody did the homework. And then that in and of itself became like a tipping point, because then everybody was doing it because they didn't want to be the person not to do it. And before they know it, by Friday, they actually had done a lot of stuff. Like they had created a lot of stuff, and it really moved the needle around this idea of traction. So they invited me to teach one of their days on Thursdays around traction. And I've just become a really big fan of theirs. And kind of the main guy named Ben, he created this technology called Hyper Series for episodic content. So if you have episodic content, that'd be the platform. But we built Concept Compass off of his platform. So the backbone of Concept Compass is this Hyper Series, and there is this kind of future thinking of the back end is all the same. It's all shared. So at some point, it will probably fuse together and become one kind of ecosystem. There's a lot of stuff I'm not going into, and there's a gamification element to it. It's not just for filmmakers, it's also for fans to engage. And so there's a lot of cool stuff with Concept Compass, but we're also big on the education, because you're not going to know how important Concept Compass is until you go through kind of the school of hard knocks. And then you realize like, oh, wow, they're right. I need to show traction. Why is a millionaire? I ask people all the time, what's your biggest one hurdle? What do you think it is, Dave?
Money.
Money, without a doubt, right? I mean, there's no hesitation. Money's not a problem, it's the problem. But then when I deep dive into it, I don't know that people are ready. because again, they're going in with just the top sheet. They're going in with a pitch deck that looks like they did it on Canva. They're going in it not,
Yeah.
and no bust against Canva, but we are looking to do a visual medium. It is a show and don't tell. It is a area of level of professionalism that you want to hit. You're asking people most times for $1 million plus.
Yeah.
You need to show traction. And if you don't have traction, and I've seen people, again, just due to my counseling degree, I think it's a psychological defense. They kind of self sabotage themselves as an excuse of why they don't get the money. And it's because, money is just so difficult. It was the investor, it wasn't me. But you're going in asking for something and you really haven't shown the investor anything, because the investor, most of the time, they just see your film as a means to an end. It's just a widget, and you need to present it as an opportunity. Now, I
Right.
will say that I've never met in the film world a passive investor. They're not going to just stroke you $1 million check and then say go have fun. That's never going to happen, and people need to kind of remove that from their thinking too. It's going to be tons of oversight. They likely want to be involved in the creative process in some way, and one person's not going to stroke you the full check anyways. So anyways, hopefully that kind of helps talk about Concept Compass, the validation, the boot camp and training that we do. Really, at the end of the day, we all are trying to level up and give as many people as we can an opportunity to really see their story told in the right way.
Yeah, no, I think you hit all the marks there. And, really hearing you kind of talk about it makes me think that what you're doing is not necessarily creating anything new, so to speak, right? In terms of the general concept, right?
Yeah.
No pun intended. But, again, what you're talking about sounds like a formalization and centralization of the kind of crowd audience discovery process. Because how do we do, crowd discovery? How do we do build hype for our product? We create a Kickstarter. We develop a web series on YouTube. We put something out like a blog post or something, and it gathers traction. And then we use that to then convince investors, hey, there is a built-in audience for what I'm trying to pitch to you.
That's
You're
right.
trying to basically centralize and formalize that into kind of like a system. Is that kind of what Concept Compass is all
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely trying to simplify it and just make it an idea of validation. You're exactly right. You're just trying to validate the idea. And again, in this modern age, you don't need to go in with confusion. Now, I have had some people kind of push back to say, oh, well, when you see the film, then you'll kind of know, then I'll find my audience. Then they'll and really, because the only thing they're going to look at to decide if they're going to go spend the $20 and the hour and a half and then the, hour drive each way or whatever to go to the movie theater. I live out in the country a little bit, so it takes me a little bit to get to the movie theater.
Yeah.
For the drive and everything, it's going to be a little thing called a trailer. So if
Right.
you can't hook them with the trailer, you're not going to hook them for the feature. And it's the same way here. If you can't hook them on a little bit of what you can deliver, then you might need to go back to the drawing board to see if you can iterate on it to get it better. And a lot of times it's small tweaks. Like most times, us filmmakers, us storytellers, we're confusing. That's really one of the biggest problems I've seen. We're trying to do too much. I don't know who the B plot is, as in the love story. Like, does that pay off? And the antagonist, the motivation
Yeah.
is confusing. You made him too much of a jerk. You know what the hero was. It just didn't make sense. You're trying to do too many genres. People don't like the word tropes because it shows that there's a formula and people resist formula. But the
Mhm.
truth is, if I buy a romance novel, you better hit certain points or it's not called a romance novel. It's called something else. There's a romance. When I pick up a romance novel, I'm expecting to read a romance novel, and you better deliver me what I'm hoping for. If I order lasagna, it better be lasagna when it comes out, not something else. So
Yeah.
tropes help you find the path of your genre. And a lot of times, again, filmmakers, when I say the word tropes, they don't even know what that is, or they don't even know what they were expected to do or what they are. Or if I ask them, what's your theme? A lot of times, filmmakers don't know, and we need to do, and I think we can do better at this. And I believe, though, we do need some guidance. We need some coaching, which is why we're trying to help.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the one thing I realized going through your boot camp, because I had the honor to take it, is that, again, I'm come from the world of public affairs. I'm going through a marketing degree, and nothing revealed in the boot camp was some kind of, you know, unknown thing, right? It was all really foundational stuff. Know your audience, develop a pitch, know how to communicate. And it just helped formalize that and help really remind me, like, oh, these are things that are foundational, fundamental, and important. You can't skip the fundamentals, right? If
Yeah.
you want to be successful. And so that was really great for, again, realigning what those fundamentals are.
Yeah.
So you offer these training programs, which is great.
Yep.
Um, Besides the boot camp, what else do you offer?
So I do offer services because, when you go through and you get distribution, that is not an easy task, and
Yeah.
people know they need help in that arena. And filmmaking is a lot like life. It's not a solo sport. Now, is there that 19-year-old that takes his iPhone and go makes the feature and edits it and scores it and accent it? And sure. But I just refuse to believe that's really what the medium was intended. That is a rarity and not the norm. And I think a lot of times, again, in our day and age, because of the technology, we think we need to do more than what we need to do. There are a bunch of people out there that want to help you, that want to come on board. And so I do consulting and offer some services. For instance, I learned how to do line producing. I learned how to do budgeting and scheduling, and I've done several crowdfunding campaigns. And like you mentioned, that is at minimum a proof element that is nice to show people when you have it. And just full disclosure, transparency, I have failed a lot too. I failed a lot. And I don't want you to go through that. And I can show you the paths. I can warn you that, hey, man, there's an ogre over there. You don't want to go over there. We want to go over here. A lot of people don't even know the difference between a sales agent and a distributor, or what is even a good deal and what to offer or ask. They don't even know the questions to ask an agent. They don't know how to get an agent or a manager or how to find or sell their scripts. So these things, you need a coach. There's a reason why the best in vocations, Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan, and they all had coaches and personal trainers, besides their own coach of the team. They all had people that they paid to help them. And a lot of times, I think Kobe Bryant talked about this, where it was the fundamentals. And every warm up, he would do the same thing. Singers, they have a thing that they do their scales, and that's just the basic, one of the most foundational things you do to warm your voice up. But you need to do your scales before you can sing. A coach and a mentor, either you have time or money. You can, if you have money and even a little bit of money, you can exponentially increase that time. And I'm starting to get to the point in my life, not that I'm old, but I am older, and I realize, time is finite. I don't have 30, 40 years to do it. And frankly, I don't know what everybody's waiting on. I always find people that are really slow to move. I'm an activator, I'm a mover. And if I can go into a mastermind or a think tank or hire a coach or a guide or a mentor, which is really what I am, I'm a guide, then I am open to doing that and exploring that. I have always, when I'm intentional, when I've jumped in my career, it's always been when I've had somebody else to kind of help me go along.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we need coaches, we need mentors. In fact, that's one of the big things I'm pushing. I've actually created a Facebook group around that, is trying to connect people who want mentors with people who want to be mentors, because I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's
great.
something that this industry lacks and we need more of, just like we have in
Yes,
the military. We need that in this industry as well.
absolutely.
Talk to me a little bit about, if you have the experience with it, because I know you mostly deal in the narrative realm, but can you tell me if there are any differences between the efforts to fund like a documentary versus funding a narrative? Is it the same process, or is it different, or how is it different?
Yeah, it is. It's a good question because I have a doc that's getting ready to come out. It's we're shopping it right now and just had the internal kind of team premiere and all that. It's looking really good. It's a good question. In Washington, D.C., which is kind of where I'm based out of, it's the number one doc area in the U.S. And so we do a lot of documentaries. You can imagine, Nat Geo used to be here, and you have the government, obviously, with a lot of documentaries. Um, it is the same in the sense of you're raising capital. You need to have your paperwork, your documentation, your diligence, all those things. All that part is the same. Your budget, your schedule, the whole bit. What is a little different can can be when you're pitching the motivation. That's the most obvious because a documentary is usually going to be extremely topical, and those are the investors you're going after. What also you can look after in a doc that you can't really in a narrative are grants. And that is a good way to go. Again, there are a lot of grants out there, not just for film, just in general. And so you do kind of have to weed through things. But again, it's 2025. It's nothing that a quick prompt can't push you in the right direction to find, depending on what your topic is. Um, I would also say depending on the crowdfunding platform, I would guide you in a certain direction. But I really like Seed and Spark for documentaries because they have this cool thing. One, the lady that runs it is just, she's a filmmaker's filmmaker. I mean, she's good people. She's still running, I believe she is. But they do a cool thing where you can also kind of present like gifts in kind. And I really find that is palatable to the doc element more than the narrative. So it's the same in raising the money, but where you go to try to find the money, I think varies a little bit. It's not going to be the same motivation. The bottom line is, and I want people to know how big the mountain is because I feel like I'd be failing you if I didn't. If you don't know that it's Mount Everest, you're getting ready to climb, then me as Sherpa would not be being honest with you.
Mhm.
Documentaries right now are a hard sell.
Yeah.
They are. They kind of always have been, but because a lot of people are doing docs, they become a hard sell. And what I would also say is a documentary that is not a feature length documentary is going to be near impossible to sell. So you need to go into that when you're doing it, knowing those things.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, documentary is one of the formats that I love. If I could be a full-time documentarian,
Yeah.
I would do that because it's such a really, I think, important art form because it's all about making a difference. And so that's why I love doc. I actually signed up for a course called The Art of Documentary, which, has been great for helping, like similar to your course, realigning what I know to what I should know, and then opening my eyes up to really a whole area of documentary I wasn't even tracking. So,
Like
yeah,
can I just add to it, just due to the documentary, and because every one of you listener should be reading the trades, and if you don't know what the trades are exactly, it is we're talking variety and these things, but there
right.
is a called the dailies that you'll get an email list that is just the top stories. You'll get it 3 days a week, and it gives you the top stories. So I caught a headline, did some research on it, and actually saw some video footage. Ken Burns, the famous documentarian, of course,
Hmm.
is releasing a documentary, a 6-part series called The American Revolution. And he's going to be doing that in at least 4 days from our recording. By the time you are listening to this, it's probably out. But
Yeah.
it's called The American Revolution. So it goes to show you that documentaries, when done right, really can go a long way. And Ken Burns has created an entire career around documentaries. If you don't know Ken Burns and you're interested in docs, you owe yourself to go do a little diligence on Ken.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone interested in documentaries can't know who
Yeah,
Ken
exactly.
Burns. I mean, we have the Ken Burns effect because of
Yeah.
Ken Burns, So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's pretty awesome. So, Revolutionary War, that's pretty cool. I'll look out for that.
Yeah.
So obviously the hot topic everybody needs to talk about and everybody does talk about when it comes to film, almost to the point of it's kind of, we talk about tropey, right? Generative AI, right? It's kind
Yeah.
of the hottest thing, and you have programs and platforms like Sora and Google's
Yeah.
VO and all these things where you can just type a prompt, bada bing, bada boom. You got a trailer, you got a video, you got this thing. It looks realistic. It sounds realistic.
Yep.
And it's fun for now, but when does it become something we need to worry about? Should we worry about Gen AI? And where do you think it's going in terms of, do you think we'll see maybe a few years down the road where you can type a prompt in and get a full feature length film, and then what happens to us, right?
Yeah.
What's our kind of future then?
Yeah. It is really an interesting topic, and you're one that obviously, like you indicated, is certainly being talked about a lot. I personally believe the toothpaste is out of the tube and you're not going to be able to get it back in. Now, I will say I do see, I think I mentioned I was a former cop, so there is a bit of a legal brain in here too. And I do
Right.
admit that the models that were trained, I think that stuff needs to get worked out.
Yeah.
I'm not waiting. I don't like, nobody wants to see people lose jobs. Nobody wants to see negative elements of it. But I will say that I'm very bullish when it comes to AI because I think it is a tool and can be an equalizer for a lot of us. Whereas the studios would kind of shun us as indies because we couldn't do all the cool stuff that they could do. We couldn't do certain effects. And now we have the ability, at least marginally, to get there. I will say that I've been messing around with it and I have a team of about 8 filmmakers, all very seasoned, most in 20 years plus, and we've been messing around with AI to kind of see what we can do. And it's not as easy as you would think. Like unless you've really messed with it, you don't really know that it's actually still quite challenging right now. Like Sora 2 is amazing for 12 seconds. And then right now it can't
Yeah.
even hold and repeat the image. It has a hard time. So you can't have a main hero all the way through, and
Yeah.
so it's created awesome stuff. But others do that, like VO3 and stuff, that you can put in an image and say, that's my hero and stuff like that. But it is not easy. And I would say for every one shot, and think about your shot list when you're doing a feature. This is just one shot. So you've got a medium of a twofer talking, right? That's my shot. You're probably going to have to put down 15 videos to get the one that is marginally usable.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. And when you're doing that right now, it kind of reminds me of the old cell phone days. Every minute you spoke on the cell phone, you'd have to pay for.
Yeah.
Right now, every video that you put down range, you have to pay for. Whether it turns out crap or not, you can't say, no, I'm not paying for that one. No, you paid for it the moment you hit generate.
Yeah.
And so, and that's very costly right now, very costly. And so you can't, it can get you about 60% of the way there, I would say, maybe even 70%. But then you
Yeah.
need a human to finish that other 30%. And I think that's likely where it's going to be for a long time. Although I will say that I did see again another headline, which again I would encourage everybody to do: be a reader, particularly in the industry that you want to be in. Be a reader. I saw a headline, and it was about a book that was 100% written by AI is actually trending favorably. And nobody wants to hear that because what does that mean to us, right? That is a little scary. I would not have guessed that. I've heard some songs that AI has created. There's a song like in the top tier right now that is, there that's playing.
Yeah.
That is a little disconcerting. I don't know that we'll get to the one prompt, give you the full feature. I know that's where they are trying to trend, you know, to watch. So you watching a something set in Middle Earth, and there's a ranger, your experience is going to be a little different than my experience. They will be unique experiences. That's a real true possibility due to AI because you'll put in your likes and it's going to start to learn Ron and knows what he likes and thinks is cool. And I want a lot of action. And, but hey, I'm watching this with my wife. So there better be a love story. There's this stuff in there that AI is going to do that I don't know where it kind of leads us. And I'll tell you where I get a little concerned about AI. not really in the film space. It's really not to divulge, and I won't go down the rabbit hole. But my concern is more about jobs.
Yeah.
Is that I think it's going to take a lot of jobs. And I don't mean film jobs, although I think that's already happening.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of jobs just in general. And I get
Yeah.
concerned, for like my kids and my kids' kids, that kind of thing. And I'm trying to have conversations around that. But from a generative AI point of view, right now, I really like it, particularly around previs, mood boards, lookbooks, animatics, um, subtitles. I watched the movie that was completely they didn't dub it in English. The lips actually changed. So it looked like the person was talking in English. And it
Mhm.
was like a Swedish film or
Mhm.
something. And AI made it look like now it was slightly kind of off at times, but your eye could barely tell.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff. And the truth is, we've been using AI now for a while, a lot of us, for things like sound cleanup.
Yeah.
Like now, you have to have extremely bad sound for it to fail. At some point, AI can now go in, even if you have soft audio or you want to eliminate something, AI can go in and do those things. Who doesn't like all that? I think where we all get a little concerned about is the artistic side of it. And I think we need to hold on to that as much as we can. Right now, again, I think a film can or a AI can get you about 60 to 70% there. I'm not seeing it go beyond that. Even if it could do a whole story, I don't know that the acting and just the cohesion and the soul, if you will, of the project would be valid.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you still need the human behind the machine.
Yeah.
If nothing else, you need somebody to prompt the machine, right? So there has to be
Yeah.
there
The
has to be
story.
some
Yeah.
exactly. There has to be some meatware
Yeah.
in sort of the system. But and I don't think I'm being bullish when I say this. I'm going to predict in about the next 5 years, we're going to be able to just either buy a set-top box or download a streaming service, and it's just going to be user-generated movies, and it's going to either be movies you generate or movies someone else has generated that have then been upvoted by the masses to rise to the top. I think
Oh,
it's
I'd say that's probably within a year.
a year. Wow.
Yeah, I
Okay.
already follow a YouTube channel of AI filmmakers, and this isn't kind of good stuff. These are amazing
Yeah.
videos, like at a major level. Now they're really short because of that whole problem, but lowered my hand here. They're really short videos, but they are amazing. So they're already kind of curating content even now. So I think in a year you're probably going to be able to go find maybe not features quite yet, but definitely shorts. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, you can go on YouTube right now and curate there's a YouTube channel with curated very high end AI content that looks amazing.
Yeah, no, I think, definitely I've seen already short films generated by AI, and there's like a AI short film festival, but
Yeah,
those still require the, you know, creator to make
absolutely.
multiple prompts and have to struggle through
Yep.
poor quality prompts. Again, I'm saying in 5 years it'll be
I see
as
what you're saying.
a one prompt movie idea, whatever, and you get a movie, and that's it, right? And you're gonna have everybody doing it, and the best are gonna rise to the top, and it's gonna be user voted. Or like what Sora's doing, you scan your face, and now you're in the movie, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things that's drawn me to the thing is just being able to have myself in a trailer for a movie I made.
Yeah.
We're doing the 48-hour film coming up here in November, and I actually made concept trailers for every single one of the possible genre ideas I was thinking of, right? Just to kind of like ideate, right?
Yeah.
And it's just really interesting what you can do. And then, I can put myself in the film if I really want to, or I can act against I Justine or Logan Paul or whoever. So I think
Yep.
that's going to be pretty cool. You want a family film, you can scan all your kids' faces and
There you
yourself and
go.
your wife, and bada bing, bada boom, you've got the Christmas movie of the generation. So I think that's where it's going to go, and that's what I'm saying. Like I think five
I see.
years is probably the round ballpark.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
um, before
Crazy.
we say goodbye to you, I really want to know who are your biggest influences in filmmaking right now? Who do you
Oh,
look to as
there's so many definitely on like world building, Peter Jackson, still very much like Zack Snyder. I watched Frankenstein and am a huge fan of Guillermo del Toro, not because of uh, the Labyrinth, Pan's Labyrinth, but I loved his Hellboy 2 movie. I was not a Hellboy 2 fan, and the world that he created for Hellboy 2, if you have not seen that, you owe it to yourself for the world building to see it. So Guillermo del Toro for sure. Um, James Cameron, I still really like a lot. He says put a love story in every movie, which is kind of interesting. And if you look at his films, even you go back to Aliens and Terminator, they all have love stories in them. And I think
Yeah,
that's because it's such a deep emotion
sure.
that we all feel that resonates with people. From like Craft, Clint Eastwood is still kicking it, which is interesting.
Yeah. Oh my
From
God.
like a structure and books and all that stuff, it's hard not to look at Joseph Campbell. If you don't know Joseph Campbell, you should. The Hero's Journey, Blake Snyder, Save the Cat,
Hmm.
Donna Miller, K.M. Weiland. Um, and I still like I love what I call like snacky books. So Louis L'Amour, he's a Western novelist from some time ago. But the novels aren't crazy long, so you can kind of bite them and eat them in bite-sized chunks. And
Right.
I loved his voice and his story element. So from like a story point of view, I love that. So yeah,
Hey, well,
hopefully that gave you a good list.
yeah, a lot of great recommendations there. Really appreciate it. And, getting back to that, what you said about the love story thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a strong human emotion. It's why I centered my film around love, right? It's really a love story. It has sci-fi elements and all this other thing, but at the end of the day, it's just a love story. And so I think that's why so many filmmakers, lean on it and why, he probably recommends it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ron. It's really
Yeah.
been enlightening to talk to you. You've brought a lot of great information, resources, and ideas to the table, and hopefully, this conversation leads a few people down your path because I think you're doing a great stuff with what you're trying to do and educating our community. Before I say goodbye to you, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, you could just do let us know over at Concept Compass what you're thinking. You can always reach out to me. I'm on all the social medias. LinkedIn is probably the best one. So if I can do anything for you, please do let me know. Otherwise, I appreciate you having me on, David.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ron. And you're always welcome back. And if you want to join the roundtable discussions that we do on a weekly basis, you're more than welcome to come join us and talk about all things photography, filmmaking, and photojournalism related. All right. Well, this has been my guest, Ron Newcomb. Thank you so much, Ron, for being here. I'm David J. Murphy. This has been an Around the Lens interview, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.